everybody, my name is Georgia Merrim and I'm a deep learning consultant for the Association of Independent Schools New South Wales. AIS New South Wales have been partnering with NPDL for 3 years now, since 2018, and we have 30 schools involved in designing for deep learning. This video is about how we can better ensure a successful collaborative inquiry process, and really for the NPDL framework, collaboration is at the heart of the work. The New Pedagogies Global team talk about deep learning requiring innovation and highly focused new practices. So there needs to be a way for developing and accessing powerful and creative new ideas. This happens best when teachers work together and not alone. The collaborative inquiry process is a significant part of the framework, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. The NPDL team describe collaborative inquiry as a powerful strategy for change. Because it simultaneously promotes professional dialogue amongst colleagues and contributes directly to improving student learning at the same time. The collaborative inquiry approach is a systematic approach for using evidence to inform practice, and research tells us that when we use evidence-informed practices, we can rest assured that teachers' capacity and expertise will be built, and student learning will improve. To ensure a successful collaborative inquiry cycle, today I'm going to frame, the exploration of this idea into 3 sections. We're going to look at the power of the mindset, the importance of skill set, and the importance of tool set to ensure that the collaborative inquiry cycle is successful. Let's start with the mindset and addressing an elephant in the room that we find here in New South Wales. One of the biggest mindset shifts for teachers is that in the past, teachers typically program individually and then they share that program with their colleagues. What we're looking for teachers to shift in their mindset here is that we want you to see yourselves as designers in a team. So this notion of moving from individual programmers to a team of designers is what we're looking for today. And so I'd ask you to think about yourselves taking on these 3 roles or personas, so to speak. I'd like to see yourself today as a designer. You are an inquirer and you are a collaborator. Write those 3 words down, and they're the things I want you to carry forward with you. This is really important for teachers' mindsets to have a sense of professionalism, integrity, and respect when working with each other in a team. The other mindset shift that we need to understand is to place ourselves in a purpose when we're designing. What is the purpose of making choices around deepening the learning? There are 2 things. When we make design choices in our teams, we want to make those choices that will lift engagement of our students, and we want to make choices that will then develop the 6 C's. Students can't develop skills if they are passively disengaged in the classroom. So first and foremost, as designers, we want you to make choices that you believe will lift the engagement of your students. I also want you to have a think about the goal of your team. As a team, we want you to discover the practices that work and to tell those stories to others. So whilst you have a purpose for designing learning that lifts engagement and develops the competencies, we also want you to look down upon that design and take a note of what's working so that you can tell your story to others and share practices across the school. And the last mindset shift that we ask our design teams to think about is the expectations and agreements that we make as a team together. So when we engage together in our inquiry teams, let's speak with each other about design ideas with curiosity and excitement. Let's assume that students are capable of rising to the clear expectations that we set for them. Let's come into our team with the belief that content and competency are equally important. And let's assume a learning stance with yourself and what you will discover about what works. These types of agreements need to be discussed and agreed upon before we start designing together. So let's look at skill set now, and process is a big part of a skill set. The NPDL work comes with a process: assess, design, implement, and measure, reflect, change. But it's helpful for teams to view this process that they're about to undertake in a linear fashion from start to finish and mark out the timeline to complete the cycle. The implementation phase is the unmovable phase. So we tend to work backwards from this, which helps us to understand how much time we have to invest in the design phase. So for example, on this particular timeline, this implementation of the unit of work is going to last 6 weeks. We have 3 weeks left, until the first lesson of that unit of work. So the design phase is going to take about 3 weeks. This includes the assess phase, the initial assess phase, that we like to take about 3 hours to do this well with teams. And then we need to understand that the measure, reflect, change phase is also going to come after implementation is finished, and we like to dedicate about 2 hours to do this properly. In total, this unit of work, or this cycle, will take about 10 weeks to complete. It's important to note that after the 10 weeks, after the measure, reflect, change phase, the inquiry team or the design team will be ready to share their learnings with colleagues. The learning design planning template guides the process for design teams. This is really important to reassure teams that they are moving in the right direction and not missing vital steps in the process for deepening the learning. We find that spending time in the assess phase particularly is critical to the success of the design and the inquiry. The reason for this is that there's a really important piece in here to understand your students' needs, interests, and skills before you go into designing. And this middle piece here is critical. We find this really important when we're designing with our teachers, is to take content from syllabus and connect that content to what students are interested in, to real world authentic problems. Time is really well spent here, and so give yourselves time and space to do it. Have a look at these examples on the screen, and I want you to focus on the first few. The content of healthy eating, food groups, proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. We can teach that in a very dry way, in a very teacher-driven way, but better if we give, students control over what they learn, how they learn, and what they'd like to learn about within the space of healthy eating. So a relatable driving question here is something like, why does it matter what food we eat? Why does it matter what food we eat? Imagine if your students were given that question, allowed to investigate the answer to that in relation to any avenue they'd like to take. They might investigate why it matters what food we eat if you're an athlete, if you're a pregnant woman, if you're the elderly, or if you're a young toddler. The outcomes are still the same, but students have a voice and a choice about what they decide to investigate and how they might present that and demonstrate their learning to their teachers and their peers. So it's wise to spend a lot of time here to transfer content, syllabus content, into authentic real-world problems. Let's move on to tool sets, and one of the unique and wonderful features of the NPDL work is it has so many wonderful tools, including the learning progressions and the learning design rubric. But let's have a look at where these tools might be placed in relation to the collaborative inquiry cycle. And we certainly don't use all these tools with our inquiry teams, but what we do is use the tools that are most relevant to the skills and the needs of that team at the time. The one I'd like to highlight to you is the one in the design phase, the cues and prompts, that isn't seen in the Tools for Engagement book, but is available to you through the NPDL Global Hub. I'd like to spend my time on this fourth phase, the measure, reflect and change phase of the work. This is the most powerful learning phase for teachers. It's best to invest 2 hours to this phase after the implementation is finished. And essentially what we like teachers to do is to individually measure where they're at on the learning design rubric, and then come together as a team and check their thinking and levels of measurement together, so that what I see as an accelerating design element is the same as what my colleagues see. We want to reflect on what's worked well. What makes us say that? What evidence do we have that might suggest that it's worked well? And what steps might we take next to make it even better next time? Because it's essential to action those changes and just select the 2 or 3 most impactful changes to deepen the learning further next time, and make sure that they are highlighted so that those changes get made for the next year. When we do the measure, reflect, change in this way, we're better equipped then to be ready to tell our story to others. And this is where the sharing across teams within the school and across our staff is really important. Building collective capacity in this way is the way we scale and diffuse the work. And this is the general scaffold that we use that works really well for our teachers, keeping it very simple and focused on these key questions works really well when we tell our stories across a school. And so just to finish off, I'd like to reiterate that the key to ensuring that teachers have a positive and uplifting experience through the inquiry cycle and that builds collective expertise and enjoyment of teaching is the mindset that we come into the process with. Please enjoy designing, and more importantly, enjoy watching your students' enthusiasm and energy for learning grow because of your dedication and hard work to deepening the learning. It's all worth it. Thank you.